Hey everyone, this is Bob Kovacs here at Wirefly, and it's time once again for another Wirefly cell phone Schmackdown. And the two contenders today are the HTC ThunderBolt, brand new for Verizon Wireless. This is Verizon's first LTE 4G phone. And on the right, the older brother of the ThunderBolt, this is the HTC EVO 4G, the very first 4G phone to be released in the US, also made by HTC. This one was on Sprint's WiMAX network. It still is on Sprint's WiMAX network, and it turned the cell phone industry on its ear when it came out in the summer of 2010. It has been a wonderful phone for Sprint, helped to put it on the map with its WiMAX service and make Sprint something of a powerhouse in the Android phone business. Both the EVO 4G and the Samsung Epic 4G really turned Sprint around as a provider of Android, really high-end Android phones. So it has been a wonderful phone, a very desirable phone, really has done very well for Sprint, and now Verizon hopes to capture some of the EVO magic here with the ThunderBolt, which in very many ways is very similar to the EVO 4G. So let's take a look at these two phones and begin the Schmackdown. Now they both have 4.3-inch diagonal 480 by 800 pixel display screens. These are both good screens. You see they are both equipped with HTC's Sense user interface. This is the famous Sense flip clock up here. The Sense buttons down here. The application tray is accessed by this button on the left. Both of these phones have identical Android menu keys down here, the same capacitive keys in the same order. They both have front-facing cameras so that they can do handy video chat. We'll flip them over. Both of these have 8 megapixel still image cameras with dual LED flash. They both have a kickstand. But if you look at them, the EVO 4G has got this little wimpy kickstand between as compared to the much more robust looking kickstand here on the ThunderBolt. Well, just look at that guy. That's a really manly looking kickstand. In fact, it's quite virile looking, if you know what I mean. Underneath the kickstand here is a speaker on the ThunderBolt, and there's not a similar speaker over here for the EVO 4G. One more thing before I get started is comparing the thickness of these two phones. Take a look at that. The EVO 4G on the right is actually a little thinner, a little slimmer than the ThunderBolt. Not sure why that's the case, especially when you consider that the EVO 4G has got a little bit bigger battery than the ThunderBolt has. This has got a 1500 milliamp hour battery versus a 1400 milliamp hour battery in the ThunderBolt. So 1500 in the EVO versus 1400 in the ThunderBolt. So did I say ThunderBolt over here? 1500 in the EVO versus 1400 in the ThunderBolt. Let's go back to that kickstand. When you set them up on their kickstands, they both point at you very nicely, so that if you're doing a video chat with their front-facing cameras, they're both facing you very nicely. If you watch a video from YouTube or a movie or something like that, it's facing you directly. But the ThunderBolt can do something well that the EVO can't do. The ThunderBolt can stand vertically, and if you try to stand the EVO vertically, it's going to topple over. It won't stand. So I like the vertical capability here of the ThunderBolt. It's relatively stable. It doesn't easily fall over. So if you want to do a vertical video chat, you've got that on the ThunderBolt. And let's go ahead and pop the covers off these two guys and take a look inside. Again, I've got the ThunderBolt on the left and the EVO on the right. This is the EVO. Notice how much bigger the battery is. I already talked about it. Now, the memory cards, both of these phones come with pre-installed memory cards. The EVO gets an 8 gigabyte memory card. The ThunderBolt gets this, just amazing, a 32 gigabyte pre-installed micro SD card. So they're both under the batteries. You need to take the battery out to get access to it. But you've got 32 gigs over here and 8 gigs over here. They also have built-in memory for storing your files. The ThunderBolt has got 8 gig of built-in storage. The EVO has only 1 gig of built-in storage. So out of the box, The Thunderbolt comes with 40 gigs of storage for your files. The EVO comes with 9 gigs of storage for your files. So that is a knockdown right there for the Thunderbolt. Really impressive that the Thunderbolt comes with that kind of storage. They both have a 1 gigahertz processors. However, the Thunderbolt has got a newer generation of the 1 gigahertz processor. It's a 1 gigahertz Snapdragon in both of these, but it's a newer generation 1 gigahertz Snapdragon in the Thunderbolt. So therefore, the Thunderbolt has a somewhat faster, somewhat more efficient processor. Now, the fact that the processor is more efficient may help with the fact that the Thunderbolt's got a smaller battery than the EVO. Not sure about that. We won't know until we get a chance to use the phone for days and understand better how they live up to their battery usage there. But the bottom line there is that the Thunderbolt has a newer generation, somewhat faster processor. The Thunderbolt also has 768 megabytes of processor RAM. That's the memory that the processor uses to run programs. The EVO 4G has got a 512 megabyte RAM for the processor. That means that the Thunderbolt has got more memory space to run programs, and just like with a computer, when you put more memory in the computer runs somewhat faster. That helps the Thunderbolt run faster, and we're going to see that when we run some benchmark tests a little later. Next, I want to run some benchmarks on these two phones. On both phones, I have two benchmarks. I've got Quadrant and I've got Smart Bench, both of which I downloaded from the Android market. They're free downloads. You can download the same things and they're easy to run. Let's get started with Quadrant. I want to run it on both phones. Let's see if I can get them to run at the same time so you can see which one does them faster. Here we go. Okay, now I mentioned that the Thunderbolt is connected via the internal Wi-Fi network here at Wirefly, whereas the EVO 4G is connected to the Sprint network. The network connection is not part of the test. It's only testing the internals in the phone, and then it uses the network connection to report the results of the tests and to compare it with others. It's not actually part of the calculations for the test. So as you can see, it looks like the Thunderbolt is getting through the Quadrant test faster. It's already zipping through the 3D graphics portions of the test. This is the last 3D graphic test. The EVO 4G is somewhat behind. Now it's asking if I want to get the results. Yes, I do want to get the results, but I'm going to wait until the EVO's done, which will be just another few seconds. And there we go. Let's get the results. Now, if you look at the EVO, it got a score of 1,119 on the Quadrant test, and the Thunderbolt got a score of 1,987. That is our new champ. That's the highest score I've ever seen in a Quadrant test, 1,987. This is a good score, a very good score here on the EVO. That puts it right in the mainstream of what Android phones can do today. However, 1987 puts the Thunderbolt on the shoulders of every other phone that's out there. I've gotten some similar results with the HTC MyTouch 4G, which is on the T-Mobile network. Pretty close to this. I'd say, in fact, it's roughly equal, but that's the highest number I've seen, and that's an outstanding number for the Thunderbolt. Wow, that's really amazing. I haven't seen a number like that before. And now I want to run Smart Bench. I have that over here on the EVO. And let's go ahead and run Smart Bench once it comes up on the EVO, and I'll go ahead and run these roughly at the same time. Now, I want to mention again that Smart Bench does not use the actual network as part of the calculations for this benchmark test. It only uses the network to report the results and to compare it with other devices. I also want to take a moment to mention that although as we speak, the Thunderbolt is not yet being sold. This is a pre-production version of the Thunderbolt. The Thunderbolt is not actually being sold by anybody, but when it is released for sale, Wirefly will have it available on the very first day it's available for sale. So if you want to buy the Thunderbolt, the very first day it's available, it will be available on Wirefly. And if you've been paying attention, the Thunderbolt is approaching the end of the test. This is the last thing. That is the last part of the Smart Bench test. That's called the Jellyfish test. And the EVO is somewhat behind. I'm going to wait until the EVO catches up. It's got a ways to go. I mentioned before that both of these have 1 gigahertz processors, but the Thunderbolt has got a newer generation 1 gigahertz processor that is clearly able to speed things up substantially. Also, it has more processor memory, and that really helps it for both the arithmetic and the graphic parts of the test. The EVO is now doing the jellyfish test. That's the last part of the Smart Bench tests, and it'll be done in just a moment, and we can see the scores. By the way, I'm running SmartBench 1.5. I downloaded it from the Android market just a couple days ago. As far as I know, that's the latest version of SmartBench. I'm going to go ahead and display the index scores. The EVO 4G, now there's 2 scores here. One's called the productivity score, productivity index, and the other is the games index. So the EVO scored 844 on the productivity index and 736 on the games index. Over here, the Thunderbolt scored 1,088 on the productivity index and 1,512 on the game index. Those are both very good scores. If you look down the charts, there are other devices that it compares with, and the Thunderbolt, at least with the Smart Bench, is roughly in the mix there. The LG Optimus, the Samsung Epic, which is one of Samsung's Galaxy S phones, gets a much higher game score than the Thunderbolt does, and roughly an equal productivity score to the Thunderbolt. Over here, the EVO is roughly equal to the Samsung Galaxy S phones in terms of its productivity index, but the Galaxy S phones just really bang out that game index because of the built-in graphics processor that the Galaxy S phones have. I want to point out that these scores that the EVO got are really good scores. There's nothing wrong with those. The EVO's a really good phone, and it's done a bang-up job on the Sprint network. I can recommend the EVO 4G wholeheartedly if you're looking for an Android phone on Sprint. But the Thunderbolt is 8 months newer, and you've got 8 months newer numbers over here. So that's what we get when we are looking at the Smart Bench and Quadrant scores on the Thunderbolt and the EVO. So that wraps up this Schmackdown. If you ask me which is the winner, I don't think there's any contest here. The Thunderbolt has got 8 months of technology on the EVO. It's got more RAM for the processor. It comes with a much higher amount of storage for your files, 40 gig versus 9 gig. It's a little thicker, which makes it a little more bulky in your pocket than the EVO is. The Thunderbolt has got a nicer kickstand that allows the phone to sit both horizontally and vertically. They both have nice screens. The Thunderbolt has got an incrementally slightly better screen, a Super LCD screen versus the LCD screen. Neither of them have the highest resolution. If you want the highest resolution possible in a 4.3-inch Android phone, the phone to get today as I speak this is the Motorola Droid X, so they could do better in the display department, but they're both very nice displays. I like the Sense user interface that they both have. They're both fast phones, good to use. I have some experience using the EVO as a phone, and it does very well as a phone. It has nice, crisp talk quality, and I expect to get the same talk quality in the Thunderbolt. So, however, the greater amount of storage, the greater processor memory, the faster processor speed, the higher benchmark scores that you get in the Thunderbolt, that causes the Thunderbolt to win this Wirefly cell phone Schmackdown. Hey, this is Bob Kovacs here at Wirefly. Thanks for watching.